Good evening and salutations, my Cheat fans. This scene with Sonny and Ronnie, right? Now, on the surface level, it seems like a nice scene, right? They introduce each other. He takes her to Bobby's. They talk about their experiences as far as, regretting the amount of time that they no longer have their loved ones. How time moves so fast, and she talks about her sister. He talks about Mike. So on the surface level, it seemed like it was nice. He was kind. He was charming and everything like that. Ronnie was like, "I'm not going to be pushed around by Tracy." When Sonny talks about Monica, he's like, he respected her and everything, and there was good reason. I think he alludes to like why she didn't really like him, right? But I feel like if Ronnie would have knew the whole history between Sonny and Monica, I don't know if she would have been so receptive as far as like allowing him to sit there and kind of show her around Port Charles. And here's my other thing: he really shouldn't have been the one doing it. Like the thing would have been much more better if it was Michael that was showing Ronnie around. You know, um, I felt like that would have been a lot more better than just Michael and Tracy talking about his weak ass alibi and the fact that listen, she's gonna do right by him because Monica loved him, and most likely he's gonna get the house, and just making sure that you know she can still come there and call it home. Like, why are you even asking that question? You really think he's gonna be like, yeah, listen, since the house is mine, you can pack up your shit and leave. Like, I don't understand what was even the point of asking that. I just felt like it would have been a lot more better. And I don't know. I feel like they kind of paired those two up and have him show her around and him talk about his experience a little bit with Monica and Mike and everything because it's Maurice Bernard. Not because the scene would have been more better if it was Michael with Ronnie, just because he's Maurice Bernard. I don't know if that's true. I'm just saying, like, it felt like, you know, all the stuff, and you've seen a clip if you've been in my stream about why Sonny and Carly shouldn't have went to the funeral. But everything that she was sitting there saying, and you're like, wait, what? Why would you? Anyway, that was the general gist of the Michael and Tracy scene. Is that she feels that his alibi is very flimsy at best. Um, he says what happens. Like he didn't, he was going to confront Drew, but he was like, I'm not gonna give in. I'm not gonna, because that's what he would want. He would want a confrontation. Now, Anna questions Carly again, and specifically more about Michael. The conversation that they had on the phone. Um, Now, the one interesting part, which I don't even know if the lawyer would have done any good. But this is like, well, I'm just like, I always, whenever I sit there and see these people, whenever I sit there and see these people being questioned by like Anna or like Chase with Christina, and Christina was like, no, I don't need a lawyer. I can sit there and do this. Like, or start like, I don't need a lawyer, whatever. Like, this is why you have a lawyer for, right? And maybe Diane could have did something, but there's a point where Carly's like, hey, listen, why don't you leave Michael alone? Because, she talks about the phone conversation, like, what did y'all talk about? And at first she's like, oh well, listen, I was just probably sitting there venting about my day, and it was like, so if I talk to Michael, he's gonna confirm that. I was like, I don't know. I mean, it was a while ago. I mean, I don't really personally remember, right? But then they talk about Monica, and this is where Anna's like, so you have access to go and the quartermain's place, right? Like you said that you and Monica came to some understanding, and like she said, hey, listen, my grandkids are there. She's like, so you have access to go into the quartermain. She's like, yeah. I was like, okay, well, you know what? Listen, that's good enough for me. And then later on, she talks to Sunny, and she felt like she gave up something that she shouldn't, and pretty much they're saying that Michael is back at the or probably never left the main suspect. And of course, again, she talks about her having access to the Quartermain Mansion. Now, after Molly left Liz, went back to talk to Anna. And one of the things that Molly was saying was that she felt like Michael orchestrated that whole meeting with Jacinda to strengthen his alibi. But they also talked about how Carly had access to the Quartermain's place, and Edward had a gun, and um, so she could have had access to the gun, and she also had motive. So that puts her, right up there. I'm like, well, maybe if Diane was there, she could have stopped that line of question. I mean, who knows? But then she also talks about how the gun could go down, so like that's a whole other thing. Now, like I said, Molly and Liz is talking. While that's going on, Rick had already escaped. Right, like Alexis is on the phone talking to her assistant, and Rick has already escaped because they decided to use goddamn duct tape. And at some point, Rick puts a knife to Alexis' throat and says, you need to call the cops, you need to confess. Alexis is like, well, if I do that, you're going down as well. You're going to go to jail as well. So we'll all go to jail if that's the case. Now, granted, Rick could have just left because at the end of the day, he still has to secure that money. You would sit there and think securing the bag would have been much more important than trying to get back at Alexis, be angry at Alexis, or whatever. He's like, okay, fine. I want you to sit there and call. 1 second. He wanted her to call Alexis. Why? I don't remember. But while that's going on, Molly and, well, I think it was Liz that was asking Molly, has she heard from her dad? And they talk about the digital detox and everything. And then they get a call from Alexis. So Liz answers the phone. She hears somebody in the background. See, the thing is, Ava came back, and you find out later on she came back to get her planner. Apparently, she left her planner or whatever. And, she splashed some in his eyes and then takes like a board or something and knocks his ass out. And Liz hears all that. Liz is like, it's kind of weird. I could have swore I heard your dad's voice. She gets a text from Alexis and they're saying, I called you by accident. I dialed you by accident or whatever. Liz later calls Rick's phone like, hey, I could have, what's going on? Willow's trial is coming soon and the dude is still MIA. Um, so he gets his ass downstairs. She actually uses handcuffs this time. I'm like, why didn't you not spring for the handcuffs last time? I don't understand that. And then they find out he wasn't sitting there taking the pills and stuff, so that's why. So apparently he has to wait like 10 more days. So this time his ass ain't leaving, and you know what it is? I thought about that first because I did sit there and say I was like, y'all are just being cheap, and that's why he was able to escape. But then it occurred to me. See, as stupid as this was, and I still think they should have sprung for handcuffs, they assumed that he was sitting there taking those sleep medications and it would make him like weak and drowsy. So like he really wouldn't have the strength to sit there and kind of get out of, those restraints. And I'm like, there's something called adrenaline, right? And I'm like, and of course, Ava sat there and said, listen, the funny thing is that if you just would, you could have just left. But you had to sit there and have your ego, get revenge, and everything like that. I'm like, I'm asking her to just left, but you want to sit there and try to be all poetic by putting the dagger to Alexis's throat. So I'm like, you know, and of course, Alexis brings back up like, I'm sorry, the accommodations isn't as good as when you lock Carly in a panic room, when she was pregnant, but this just have to do. Like, yes, that's right. Keep throwing that shit in his face. Okay, so the family, pretty much Felicia, Spinelli, and James are gonna go see Nate, right? And they get stopped by Britt. And Britt's like, oh, well, I don't think it's a good idea. Like, do you think that Maxie will sit there and think it's a good idea? You think she'll be okay with this? I'm like, first of all, why would Maxie give two flying shits about what you think? And like, why are you concerned with Maxie? And like, you haven't even really sat there and said a reason why you don't want James to sit there and see his dad. But for some odd reason, she convinces Felicia and Spinelli to like give it a day or whatever. So just to see a child psychologist before, the meeting takes place. There's a point where Lisa's like, listen, we respect your pain, but like no one asked for it. So they send James to go get a soda or whatever. And James decided to go see his dad anyway. And he brought two sodas because, he's a good kid and everything. And so they talk and they bond over soda and stuff. And at some point, Felicia and Spinelli are just like, yo, where's James at? They see him bonding, so they're like, listen, everything is good, right? Spinelli, at first, he's a little kind of jealous because he, like you said, he was his default, stepdad or whatever, right? He was like, maybe it's just a green-eyed monster talking or whatever, but he also did sit there and say, there's something off. Like, he couldn't sit there and say what it was, but he was like, there is something that is off. So there's something going on between Britt and Nathan. What that is, I know people listening to guessing. It's Peter in a mask or something, or it's I have no idea. Um, but yeah, well, let's see. Anyway, I feel like that's about it. It's crazy. It's been like 3 days. Like I said, listen, I love GH. I got my hoodie. Okay, so love GH. I did kind of walk in the break for a little bit though. Like even if it was for like 3 days, I walked in it for a little bit. I did, but I feel like that's also about it. That's the general gist of the episode. If I miss anything, write in the comment section below. Come to the live stream tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I'll be talking about all 5 of the soap operas. You know what they are, and I'll see you then.